McAlpine's Fusiliers, uh, McAlpine's Fusiliers. In the recent video I did on Irish people being in charge in the public service in Ireland, even in the Catholic Church, in the military and civil service and all that, I did draw attention to the fact that a proportion of Irish people are bullies, both men and women, and that was borne out by a post there by a chap saying that in Australia, still going on, there's some of the Irish companies over there bully their staff. I've always said that when anyone who has any bit of ability applies for a job anywhere, the interview should be two-way. The people hiring should interview their candidate, but the candidate should interview the company to see what they're up to as well. A lot of companies are run by bullies, and the tales that come out of them are unbelievable. Even some companies doing environment and all that sort of stuff, the women working in it get the dog's abuse by ignorant people over them, both men and women, mostly men. So that doesn't mean everyone's doing the same. There are some fantastic building companies in Ireland. Some of them do well, but we all do a good job. But we all know that the best way to work staff is to let them run at their own pace, let them bring out their own talents, and yes, if somebody's not dragging their feet, fair enough. But generally speaking, staff work perfectly hard without very little supervision at all. You'll notice that in places you go into, like hardware shops and all that. Very few people need to be goaded to the extent. But this was the view of Paddy. If you get £10 worth out of them today, force them harder and get 20. And when they achieve that, get 30. And then set them a target for 50. And this is Paddy's attitude. This is our government's attitude. And this is what our voters love in their politicians. And this, of course, ends in complete disaster. We're going to look at the song. Dominic Behan, I think it was, who popularised it. It was there before that. It was a traditional Irish song. I want to explain some of the terms. You know, in the beginning, in this talking bit, in the introduction, or is it the prologue or whatever? Come all ye pincer laddies. At that time, there was no or steel casing or shuttering. It was big boards that you see on scaffolding. Big boards, wooden boards, and they were held together by 6-inch nails, and they were driven in by a lump hammer, and they had to be pulled out by a special pincers. And the lads that did that were called pincer laddies. I think they were paid a little less. It was a tough enough job to pull them out, because it's just yourself. You drive a nail into two pieces of wood together and you try to pull it out. It's not that easy. So anyway, that was what the pincer, a pair of pincers, was. Okay, and they had jimmy bars and all that for it. They had special tools for it. Rough work though at the same time, and often done up at very high places and in dangerous places. Now the next thing you see there is long distance men. Certain jobs would have moving crews that had specialised in a particular thing. Might be putting up arches or bridges or whatever, and there'd be certain work they'd come, and they might come from 30 miles away in the morning and go home, and they got a subsistence allowance, which short is for sub. And in the song, in the pub, they drank their sup. They drank their sup. They didn't drink their sup. They drank their sub. They drank their subsistence allowance, which was an allowance for going and getting a meal and getting provisions wherever you were working away from home, and maybe even getting digs for the night or a place to stay for the night. That's subsistence allowance. It's common in all workplaces. Now the other thing is, don't ever work for McAlpine, Wimpy or John Lang, for you'll stand behind the mixer till your skin is turned to tan, and they'll say, "Good on you, Paddy," give you the praise, a clap on the back, with your boat fare in your hand. Now that can be a bit hard to hear. It's B-O-A-T, boat fare, and that means that when you went over, you had to get your boat fare to get over to Holyhead, but when you got there, you'd normally keep your boat fare. It was good practice to keep enough to get back in case things went bottom up. Don't forget, the war was on. There was every chance Hitler would invade England at the time, so you'd keep your boat fare in your pocket. You wouldn't keep it in your hand, or maybe you'd have to borrow it or whatever. But that's what that means, with your boat fare in your hand. The Crown was a public house in Cricklewood. The Crown is still there, and this is where they went in. They loved that pub. That was very, very, very popular. And as I say, they drank their sub there, and they say Owl's crying and Biddy's sighing and all that. There'd be some of the Londoners women would be looking for men. they might be a bit past off sell by date, but they'll be looking for men. And then, of course, when Paddy get drunk, there'll be a row and they start to cry, and all of this would be going on. Now, you see another thing there, horse-face tool. With horse-face tool, sure you knew the rule. No money if you stop for rain, and what Horseface said when he saw him dead. Horseface tool was the foreman, he was the gaffer. They called him Horseface because he looked like a horse. And he was, O'Toole was his name, so that proves he was an Irish foreman in the song, with Horseface tool, for you knew the rule. So he was one of the people that we are identifying and trying to bring to your attention. Again, it doesn't mean that everyone and every boss and every foreman is like that. It doesn't mean it that at all. But if they're around and they'll try to get into a position of authority, and all they know is plough on and plough on and plough on and keep at it and keep at it and don't go home at all, stay up for the whole week, and this is how they think they get on, and they tell that to the company people and they think it's great, and they give them even more authority. Now the other thing comes up is the spike. The spike, I think it's Cromwell Road, not Cromwell. I think it's Comberwell Road, I think is the name of the place. Now, the spike was a doss house. The nuns had, the Sisters of Nazareth, was it, or the Nazareth nuns or something. They had a kind of a buckshy doss house somewhere, and they were in the train, and the train went past in 1850, and the passengers could see in and see right into the dormitories, and the nuns didn't like that, so they moved, and they moved up to near this Comberwell Road, and they built a doss house there, and then the local authority or the council or whoever they were, the board of guardians, added to it on both sides and made this huge big building which was for homeless men. And in the latter days it was favoured by alcoholics, and there was an awful job cleaning up after them, and they wouldn't use the toilets and all that. It was a rough spot. It was closed, I think, in about 86 or thereabout, 86. Anyway, that's what it was. It was a doss house, the spike. Up in the spike you will find them. It got its name, the Tink, and it's not known exactly how it got its name, but there was a tool for splitting stones. You'd have to earn your keep a bit, or split a few stones, and these people would be knights of the road, and that's sleeping rough, and this was a spike for breaking the stones. Not guaranteed that that's why it was called a spike. I'm only giving you the idea. Now, also, down upon the Isle of Grain, and there's a place called Alwyn in Wales. They were building a dam in Alwyn as to go in. It wasn't far into Wales. But the Isle of Grains is a power station down on the south of England, the Isle of Grains, and that's for the shuttering dam and the hydro dams and all that. Shuttering dams was in Wales, in that Alwyn, and down upon the Isle of Grains, hydro dams, and underneath the Thames in a hole, which would be in London. So just to understand, the Isle of Grains was the building of a big power station down in the south of England. I think it's still there. Okay, so now you know what the Isle of Grains is. And shuttering jams. Jams is the shutter. It's putting a piece across between the two sides where you have a right angle like that. You put across. That's a jam. We still use this statement. Put a jam in that door there. Shuttering jams. So the shuttering is what's on the internet. It's shuttering jams. And the other thing is a hod. That's a kind of an English name for a yoke on your shoulder here that you put the mortar on and you carry it up. Your McAlpine's his God was a well-filled hod, and your shoulder full of bits and sears. So rough going all round, and I hope that makes it clear in 8 or 9 minutes what the song is about, and that you're next to me here. And I love that song. I think Ronnie Drew and the Dubliners does a fantastic job, and there's several others do it too. A lovely old song to listen to there, and so typical. And it's a mindset that the Irish are slowly coming out of that. And it's no harm, because it was pure hardship. It was pure hardship. But hardship is not gone in the world, of course, and we know that from what's going on in the Ukraine. There's still hardship happening, unfortunately. All we can do is hope for the best. Thank you very much. Give me a thumbs up and a thumbs down. We'll see you back for something else.